Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It is January 13th, 2020, and I'll start by reading our vision statement as we always do. The Ashland Public Schools cultivates the academic and social emotional growth of each student through a supportive, collaborative, innovative, and challenging environment. Students will develop into self-motivated, resilient, lifelong learners who embrace their role as responsible contributors to a global community. This meeting is being recorded by WACA Cable TV. Our order of business this evening includes our open session call to order, opening procedures, agenda review and adoption. There'll be time for public comment, and the administrative items include the superintendent's update on COVID-19 and anything else, approval of revised school committee meeting schedule, approval of AMS student activity stipend for AMS Chess Club, FY21 budget update by Chris Matthew, vote to approve hourly salary increase to meet new minimum wage $13.50 effective January 1, 2021, update from Paul Kendall on the Mindes Building Committee, warrant approvals by Kathy Bates. The consent actions include approval of minutes December 4th, 2020, December 8th, 2020, acceptance of gifts and donations if there are any, committee reports of activities, assistant superintendent update, member update, action items, and then we will adjourn to move into executive session under MGLC 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions, all non-union personnel, or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And 3, conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Not to return to open session. Ashland Educators Association teacher contract, teacher nurses contract, Ashland Unit B education support personnel contract, and Ashland secretaries, and not to return into open session. So I will take roll call and ask the members just to confirm that you are okay with this order of business this evening. I'll start with you, Paul Kendall.
Yes.
Erin Williams.
Yes.
Kathy Bates.
Here and yes.
Mark Terry.
Here and yes.
Excellent. Then next, I will ask if there are any members of the public here that would like to offer comment this evening. And seeing none, I will ask you, Jim, then to give us your update, please.
Sure. Good evening. Before I begin, if you don't mind, Mrs. Tosti, I just want to take a moment. This week we lost a wonderful, supportive community member in Jim Hanna. And Jim and I had a lot of great times over my 7 years as superintendent with regard to him popping into my office and saying, "Hey, Jimmy, tell me about this line item," or "Tell me about this." And someone who was always questioning and asking really good, thoughtful questions about our budget and how we were doing things. And he and I developed a really strong admiration for one another. And so much as Karen Johnson's on here too, where we'd be dropping off budget books at his house so he could be prepared for town meeting and have questions and give me a call. But I just felt that I needed to express that, how much of a loss he will be to the community and how much he meant to this community. So rest in peace, Jim. And I will begin with the COVID report. So a couple things. One, as you know, on Monday, we had an opportunity to have the Department of Public Health through the work of Ed Berman, who's on here, and Audrey LaCroix, working to get them to come out to Ashland High School to provide us testing as they viewed a number of our cases as a community outbreak. We had originally about 570 folks sign up to take the test. 474, I think Ed has said the right number, finalized and did actually take the test. We do not have all the complete results yet. We hope to get that in the next day or two. But as of today, I know of, we had about 397 of those tests originally were scheduled to be students across all grade levels, majority of them being clearly at the high school, but we did pick up a number from the other schools, and we've had identified 3 positive cases through this testing process, which, again, as we think about opening the high school back into the hybrid model, I think it's been a really, it's a blessing to be able to have this testing occur for us this week. You'll notice that we've had some cases, 2 cases at Warren, happen to be in the same room, but I want to be really clear. We closed down the room. It happened really at the end of last week, and we found out about a case that would have affected the cohort B this week. 2 very separate scenarios, not related to one another, household transmissions again. And that's what we're finding. The majority of the transmissions that are occurring are household members passing it from one person to the other. It's not, we again have no evidence of in-school transmission anywhere. The students, when we close the room down, or we call them close contacts, are tested and they're coming back negative, as well as any staff members. So that's where we are this week with COVID. We have our normal report on Friday. We've certainly seen the overall numbers in the town decrease every day, compared to last week where we were in the mid to high 20s per day. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those numbers are and how they're reflective of the community over the past week.
Jim, can I just ask a quick question on the testing from the high school or the schools generally? You said there were 3 positives. I assume those were all asymptomatic cases?
No, you can't assume that.
Okay.
So they are not all asymptomatic. We've actually had, they were, I believe, Ed and Audrey and I actually just talked about this less than an hour ago, so you'd think I'd have it off the top of my head. There were 2 that were symptomatic that we knew of and had tested. Someone was positive in their household, but we went forward to test. 1 was asymptomatic.
Thank you.
So, but if they were symptomatic, they weren't supposed to come.
Well, we actually had, that is true.
So,
Not supposed to. But after we went back and found, after they tested and then found out they were positive, we went back and asked questions, Paul. So that's how we know they were symptomatic.
yeah, I mean, we were practicing. So it was a safe process. So better to catch them, I guess.
But your point is well taken. I don't know how many times I could have said, don't come in if you have symptoms, but they did. But I think to that point too, we believe our procedures are really strong inside our schools, and that's the piece that I want to emphasize, and I'll continue to emphasize on Friday, is that we could be having some asymptomatic carriers in our building, which is more than likely, right? But we're wearing masks, we're physically distanced, and that is why we're not seeing spread within the schools. The last piece is I attended a webinar yesterday from the Department of Ed dealing with potential pool testing, which is the process of taking a group of testers, putting them in one pile, if you will, having those all tested. If they're all negative, there's no more conversation with that specific pool. If someone in that pool is tested as positive, then everyone in that pool gets retested, and we go from there. It doesn't mean everyone's a close contact because you don't even know who you're in the pool with. So there's still more work to be done with the department on that, Department of Ed. But we have applied to be a part of the rollout, and more information should be coming next week. I think it's a 6-week free program. It's going to be a lot of work on our end, And I know Audrey, and I met with her today. It's just adding more to the caseload and workload of everybody else. But in the end, if we're having the opportunity to test more and more people on a regular basis, weekly basis, I think that's something we should be considering for our district. So I think that is it for COVID until Friday.
Excellent.
Questions or
Comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the next item on our agenda. We're looking to revise our school committee meeting schedule, moving from our Wednesday night position to a Thursday night starting next week. And this is to, I think we shared it before, but Mark Terry, we're very proud to announce he's been selected to work with the MASC as, what's the title, Mark? Is it a division representative?
I guess I'm the Division 2 chair, which is a position on the board of directors for the MASC.
Excellent. Yes. So in order to accommodate Mark's ability to attend those meetings, we are just going to move things around a little bit. And we're proposing Thursday night meeting. Is it week 1 and week 3 every month? And the schedule's been attached to your agenda. So is there anybody that has any issue with that? Or notice any problems with the dates listed?
I just want to thank everybody for their flexibility again. I appreciate that from everybody who comes to these meetings on behalf of the staff, but also my colleagues, all 4 of you. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for serving. And we look forward to hearing more.
We're happy
about
to
that.
support you, Mark.
So, yeah,
Thank you, Kathy.
congratulations on that. So I will take a vote on the a motion, please, on the revised schedule.
Move to approve the revised schedule as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor, Paul Kendall? Kathy Bates?
Aye.
Mark Terry?
Aye.
Erin Williams?
Aye.
And aye for me as well. That passes. Thank you. And then next up, the approval for an AMS student activity stipend for AMS Chess Club, $1,268.
Before I present that, I just want to be clear for those folks who are watching, that means next week. So it's a back-to-back weeks of meetings. So next Thursday would be that the Thursday we meet, the first Thursday we meet. So it's the 3rd Thursday of the month. So just want to be clear.
School committee, yep.
And I don't know, before we move on, if this is the right time to bring up, that now that we're moving to Thursday, and we've got that standing Friday morning meeting on a weekly basis. I don't know how folks are feeling about doing those 2 back-to-back, whether you're interested in trying to consolidate them. If we're getting the information Thursday night, there's not necessarily a reason to do it on Friday. On the other hand, setting aside the information for Friday and isolating it for that is also beneficial. So if folks want to weigh in on how you want to move forward, whether your expectation is to have a Friday meeting next week after the Thursday meeting, or whether, and Jim, I'll hear from you on that as well, whether you feel that it can be, the information can be shared on a Thursday night.
I mean, the date is not going to change very much between 6 o'clock on a Thursday night and 5 o'clock in a Friday morning.
Well, Jim, they're not releasing the state data until Thursday night, right?
Correct. But
So
we actually get the state data. We get the positivity rate, Paul, that we're looking for. We get that on Thursdays, or actually on Wednesdays. They send that to us ahead of time.
okay.
Yeah. The only thing we wouldn't have would be the athletic component of what's happening in the other district.
Right.
That's all. But all the other data we have internal. Yes.
It's just a really tight turnaround because they send it out at 4 or 5 on Thursday, and then we'd have
5 o'clock on Thursday. Right.
yeah, we'd have a 6 o'clock meeting.
And does that put additional pressure on you, Jim?
No more pressure than I feel now.
How do other folks feel about it?
I mean, it's really plug and play. So.
My only concern would be that we've had the Friday COVID meetings go quite long. And so if you're having a COVID update that ends up dragging on, what happens to the rest of the agenda? That's my only thought.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
You just order at the end of the Thursday. And then if Jim's ignoring us, he can massage the data while he's while we're talking. So,
I mean, part of it is, I mean, theoretically, I mean, the Friday meetings have turned into meetings versus what they were intended to be, which was an update of what's happening within our community. But, you know, that's why we had booked them every Friday. So,
Right.
Right, but like, it's also not really feasible if we're talking about when the updates turn into making a decision about whether to have athletics or whether to go remote, or it's not feasible really to do that in 15 minutes.
right.
True.
Yeah, but of
Maybe we
course,
should
you know,
just continue.
on the other hand, though, if we see some of our evening meetings have been very light and really have only been discussions about COVID with maybe one or two others short topics, and we would be talking about the same thing in the morning. On the other hand, a meeting like tonight, we're going to be, you know, listening about the Mindes project for a while. We're going to have an executive session. And if we had a heavy duty decision to make about models of learning, that tonight would not be a great night to do that. So, I mean, I could see it going both ways. And I just really wanted to see if anybody felt strongly about it. I mean, one thing we can do is have our meeting next Thursday. And if we feel at that point that we have covered everything we need to cover, we can cancel Friday's meeting and then, you know, make the decision then, unless people have strong feelings about how we need to move forward.
And we also need,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we also need to consider we've relied a lot on Ed and Audrey and what they're, you know, if they can be available for the Thursday evening, and is that more of an inconvenience to them and their families versus the Friday morning?
Well, Ed's on this call, and so if we're doing this next Thursday, he's on this one. It's two meetings for him, right? I'm somewhat indifferent. Not having the Friday calls twice a month helps Jim and I Friday mornings. We had to move things around because we have project call that conflicted with that. And last week we had to shift it to the afternoon, scramble around because our meetings tend to run a little bit late sometimes on Friday mornings. So Mike's on that as well. So that's another consideration. Is I'm fine doing it either way. It would simplify 2 Fridays a month for Jim, Mike, and I. So.
Okay. And Ed, did you have anything you want to share about that?
I'll leave it up to my work wife.
Is she on?
Your
I don't think so.
So
One makes no difference to me.
I guess, I mean, the bottom line is we can continue to post that Friday meeting and cancel it should we need to, if the data through that Thursday is relatively straightforward, right?
I think I won't say for the most part, but certainly these meetings didn't go the way we thought they would after we got going with them. You know, I think we thought that we'd be able to do a 15-minute check-in, we'd be able to make a decision and move on. And obviously there've been a lot of more difficult issues that we've had to spend some time on. I think the idea of keeping both on the books, with the idea that if there's anything of real substance that really isn't going to fit into a reasonable sized agenda on Thursday night, then we meet on Friday morning. But if we can do it on Thursday night, because we've got a good sense of trends, which generally we do, then we can do it more quickly and be done with them on Thursday night. So I think the idea of continuing to post both of them, with knowing that we may cancel the Friday mornings a couple times a month, makes a lot of sense.
Let's move forward that way. And then if we see that a different strategy is needed as we move along, we can always pivot, but at least that gives us the most flexibility, at least through next week, to see how that goes. And if there's several weeks of not needing that Friday morning, then we can stop posting. But why don't we move forward that way, keep it posted with the intention that, and we can let the community know if we're able to handle all of the business Thursday evening, then there would be no reason to inconvenience everybody else the following morning.
Yeah, that was going to be my only thing, is the communication piece. If we're finishing up 8 o'clock on Thursday for a 7:30 morning meeting the following day. We do have a couple of community members that routinely show up to that Friday morning meeting. So I want to make sure that they don't sit around waiting for a meeting that's not going to happen. So we want to make sure we communicate it.
Sure,
I think
yeah,
it's-
that's my concern as well, Paul. So as long as like the understanding is that our best intention is to try to cover that business on Thursday evenings. But if that becomes a problem, then we want to reserve the right to have that Friday morning meeting.
So just to that point, and I don't want to belabor the point, but if we plan on definitely meeting next Friday, even though we have a Thursday meeting, we can at least make that announcement in that time slot where those people tend to come.
We can make it this Friday.
Yeah.
Is that Jim?
We have a meeting
Make that
this Friday
announcement.
too.
Friday
Oh,
anyway.
right. I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Never mind.
Reiterate it though.
No,
Yeah.
but that makes sense. So we'll talk, yeah. Announce it on Friday.
I mean, after the Friday morning meetings, a lot of times Jim sends out a communication anyway, so he'll just be sending it out Thursday evening. So
Correct.
as long as we're communicating, people aren't, because it's also not going to be every Friday, right? That we're going to have Friday meetings the other Fridays. So
Right. It's a little bit more difficult for the community to keep track of it, but
Right.
you know, I'm sure Jim will make it clear in the communication, and then hopefully we'll get on some kind of a pattern that makes sense, and we'll take it from there.
Cool.
All right. So moving on then to the chess club.
Yeah, so there's interest at the middle school in creating a chess club supervised by Ginny Sedana and Ryan Van Wy. They would be meeting online, so it's remote every Tuesday afternoon. We have a stipend amount that we've agreed to with the AEA in the past. So it's $1,268. So I don't see Dave here, and I don't have the contract in front of me. I think we must have already had a chess club in the past. Actually, we did in December. We approved it, so we're just looking to approve the stipend of $1,268.
Who's got that one?
Money is available.
So move.
And who second?
I was actually.
Well,
I'll
Mark had a
second-
question.
I'll second it, and then I'll just, if I can pose the question for you.
Sure.
Maybe.
Discussion.
Jim, we have funds available?
Jim, did you say this middle school or high school?
Middle school.
Middle school.
Yeah.
Someone's happy.
I have a new
Aaron playing
member.
chess.
Oh,
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, no, Chase beat Phil for the first time last night. And so, no, we've become a big chess family and binge the Queen's Gambit. So that'll be a nice way for Chase to still stay integrated with his middle school family.
So
Excellent. So I'll call on you first then to say all in favor. Aaron Williams,
Hi.
Kathy Bates,
I,
Paul Kendall, Mark Derry,
Aye.
and I for me as well. That passes.
Great.
And then moving on to you, Chris, for the budget update FY21.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
So the financials I'm going to be discussing are as of December 22nd, 2020. I provided in the packet a narrative and then some supporting documentations. I can just summarize what I already kind of sent over if that's helpful.
Sure.
Okay. So overall, the district has either spent or encumbered 93.6% of its available budget, leaving an unencumbered balance of $2,240,000, of which $1,973,000 is related to salaries. Of the $1,973,000, $463,000 is affiliated with the last town meeting that we had, where which transferred $768,000 into the general fund. So of that $768,000, $463,000 was transferred to salaries, salary reserve or new positions. The remaining $1.5 million is a result of multiple line items. For example, instructional salaries represent $776,000. Special education have available funds of $318,000. Other salaries represent $287,000. And as I mentioned, attached to this evening's agenda is a file which itemizes each of those salary lines into kind of line item categories. It's just, there's, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 line items that make up those 5 major categories. Besides salaries, there are 3 other categories which warrant comment: utilities, transportation, and special education. Utilities, when you net the general fund and the offsets together, report an unfavorable variance of $335,000. So looking at that, it looks like it's 2 factors. One, I think our encumbrances are a little aggressive. So to the tune of about 164, about half of that is kind of encumbering more than we actually need to. And we can tighten that up a little bit, I think, on the ledger. And it's the 3 categories. It's electricity, water, sewer, and heating. And it's kind of a mixture of those 3. And then the other one is the way that we budgeted heat. That's making up the other component of it. And that's probably about $125,000 to $130,000. And the driving factor of that is I think we anticipated on using our revolving account more, but with the lack of rentals right now, we fully encumber the heat onto the general fund.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that we're keeping the windows open?
Well, so I started writing that, and I just don't, when I'm looking at the year-to-date actuals, they're almost on par to where we were last year at this time, which is why I think it's just an encumbrance issue and a budget matter, opposed to actuals rising up. But I do think, no matter what, I think we're going to have some excessive heat costs come through, over the next month or 2.
Well, if there's not a significant change, what does that say about how well sealed our buildings are?
That's another point.
That's the next thing you talk about, Paul, is the new building.
I thought it was a global warming comment personally.
Yeah, 40-degree days. It's not bad.
So the last 2 items that I was going to discuss were transportation. Right now, we have an available budget of $57,000. After some discussions with our vendor, I'd expect that to turn to be about $130,000 worth of savings. And the last item is special education out of district tuition. We have a net available balance of $483,000. That's primarily related to 8 students that we thought were going out of district, which we retained in district, at least for now. So half of that, at a minimum, would be recognized as savings within the unit.
Did you notice Kathy smile when you said that?
Well, I mean, we'll put a frame of reference on that too for Kathy, who is smiling for this year. Those students that are part of, we had budgeted and anticipated going out, they're actually part of the budget and anticipated going out for FY22. Just so you know, so when eventually we show the FY22 budget, it's going to be pretty flat, and you're going to say, "Oh, wow, great job." But you got to step back into the FY21. We've been able to hold some of these students in district for this year, but fully anticipate if we were probably in a non-hybrid, non-remote scenario, that number would not be $483,000 of savings. It just wouldn't be.
So that's my update. I'm happy to answer any questions or.
I will open it up to the board for comments or questions or concerns. I'll say first, Mike, it looks like you have your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to say, or is that a mistake? Mike Kyra.
Must be a mistake. I didn't do anything.
I see a hand.
You see his
No,
hand?
he was doing like this.
High five.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just play with my hands. That's I'm Italian.
Italian contemplation, right?
Yeah.
No,
Sorry,
I
Laurie.
see like a real, one of the Zoom hands.
I don't. That's
don't.
interesting.
I do.
No.
Is it your-
Yeah, still there. But okay, as long as I know, I will move forward and ask the board to ask Chris their questions.
Chris, just maybe for clarification of anybody who's not familiar with sort of how public sector finance works, when you talk about encumbrances, you're really talking about sort of money that's allocated for a particular purpose versus money that's not, right? So you talk about money that hasn't been encumbered. that's money that, and I guess I'm asking this as a question.
Sure, just so for an
Money that is
example,
available for other purposes.
essentially, yes. You know, if for an encumbrance, I consider a purchase order that we've already sent to a vendor or encumbered those funds. So the available balance is the difference of that. So it's something that we already haven't committed to.
Do you
Some
consider,
of what-
if
oh, sorry.
you look at payroll,
I'm sorry.
payroll for the year, is that basically something like we do we encumber funds based on expected salary costs?
We do, with a couple of exceptions. So like the coaches, we don't encumber all of those. We don't encumber some of the subs. So there's definitely probably $250,000 or so of unencumbered funds. I'm sorry, of available budget that we know we're going to spend anyways.
Right.
But so essentially encumbered is something we've already committed to or we know is going to happen.
So traditional nomenclature for anybody that has questions is it's an accrual.
Correct. Yeah.
Other questions or concerns? So this is just an update, right, Chris? No action is needed.
So before we end with that, I think I also want to mention that we received an email today from Brittany Iacoponi from Town Hall with regard to getting our budget squared away for FY22. And I can honestly say that Chris and I went over some stuff yesterday. Our budget and my executive summary is pretty close to being done. So we're going to need to set some sort of time frame for the school committee to, if we want to do a workshop remotely like we have in the past, or which you've typically done to hear from the principals, directors, et cetera, and or have me just present the executive summary to you. But they're looking for us to come before the FinCom in February. I pushed back a little bit saying, so you want our budget done by February 2nd, but yet we need to actually go through a process. And that wasn't the intent of Brittany and Scott from FinCom. It was just to let us know that after the special town meeting is coming up, they want to get rolling on the budget. That's all. So they wanted to put it out there. But we're in really good shape in terms of the budget being actually finalized from our end, not necessarily your end, but from our end.
So Jim, I think a lot of the time when we have that budget workshop,
yep.
It really pivots around what there is to discuss as far as, and I don't know if this year is kind of different in that, hey, we've been singularly focused on something all year and recovering from that, or if there's, just like other years, there's plenty of things to discuss of, hey, these are things we really ought to be doing, but we can't afford now, or what's on the truck, not on the truck.
No, there'll be stuff that we certainly will always have in arrears there, saying we need to continue to think about for future years. But I think we have a very solid budget moving forward for next year. That it's definitely level service plus. So there are some added positions. There are, but we're in a good position to do that right now.
And I mean, one thing I'll say just in terms of process around that is, I find it helpful to, it sort of feels like a mid-year check-in when we do the summer retreat meetings, which I don't even remember whether we tried to do something like that this summer, but it serves another opportunity for me to think in more big picture than I think we spend most of our time thinking about, particularly this year where it's been all COVID all the time. It's a way to sort of think about where are we going? What do we still feel like we have to do to better serve our students? So I'd like at least some opportunity to have some discussion around that. I don't know that it needs to be the same kind of thing that we've done in the past, but I think some meaningful discussion ought to be had about the budget and what's in it and what's not, and what we'd like to have in it, but we can't.
So why don't I do this? Why don't I pull together some potential dates for a workshop and send that out to the group and see if we can find an hour or two just to go through. It'd probably be more likely after the February break, just based on timing right now. of things that we have that coming up with town meeting and school committee, school building vote and all that.
Sounds good. Yeah, I would agree with that. Way forward, I find those meetings helpful, especially with their new positions requested for us to understand and sort of what's on the back burner and what we're preparing for moving forward. So it doesn't have to, be on a weekend necessarily. I mean, unless it's people can't find the time anywhere else. But now that we have this opportunity to do it on Zoom, hopefully we can make it a little bit more convenient for everybody. But I'll let you figure that out, Jim. What's going to work best for all of you, and if you can come back with some proposals, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, next up is a request to approve an hourly salary increase to meet the new minimum wage, $13.50 effective January 1, 2021.
So we have a number of employees who are impacted by minimum wage, whether it's our daily subs and or some cafeteria staff, EDP aid, and currently we would be under that new minimum wage law that came into effect January 1. So it's not a huge impact on our budget, but I'm just asking. I think it's a fair thing to do to ensure that our employees are getting that minimum.
Yeah, this is the point where every time the state raises the minimum wage, I always feel like I have to say we're not covered by that. So this is a moral discussion, not a legal one, and I don't want the community to think we're not meeting the legal minimum wage. We're covered by the federal law, excuse me, that's like 7.25. So that we're not a legal compliance issue. It's a matter of sort of recognizing that Massachusetts costs a lot of money, and there is a moral bar that's being set, even if there's not a legal one. So I certainly support the increase, but I want everybody to know that it's not a requirement if somebody felt differently.
Yeah, I always find these to be ones of like, really? I paid my people that come watch my kid, more than this. So I always struggle with, why do we even need to have this conversation? Why is it set as low as it is? I'm not saying it should be $30 an hour or something, but to always be up against that floor, essentially. I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way every time we talk about it. So
Well, the budget's coming up.
I'm happy moving it up, but it just seems like we're always on the floor. And I don't think we should be.
I share your concern, Paul. And Kathy or Aaron, any input on this? All right, so.
Yeah. Thanks for that clarification, Mark. I had forgotten that from the last time. But,
Yeah, I don't want anybody thinking like we haven't been paying the minimum wage legally for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Or, sometimes this comes up for discussion, a similar type of thing where, a law has changed and it's not really a discussion. We just need to vote to change our policy because we're going to be in accordance with the law, but that's not really what's going on here. But it sounds like folks are in support of this move, so I will take a motion.
I guess I could read it. I move to approve increasing the hourly salaries to meet the new minimum wage set at $13.50 effective January 1, 2021.
Second.
All in favor, Mark Cherry,
Aye.
Paul Kendall,
Aye.
Kathy Bates,
Aye.
Aaron Williams, and I for me as well. That passes. Thank you.
Before we move on, Jim, just as that's worded, does that mean that if we had anybody that has worked the past several weeks, is this retroactive?
No. Moving forward.
Then it probably was weird.
The way the motion read.
worded.
Yeah.
I know the intent of the wording was saying that's when the state one went in. So.
Okay. I mean, listen, I'm always willing to do a retro, just more work for Chris. That's fine.
Well, that's okay then.
It's going to be very minimal and very few people because of the high school's been closed down for remote only. So,
Yeah, I assume it doesn't, it's not a big deal. I just, when I read it and then we talked about it, I'm like, does that mean we're also going back to the first? Certainly that's the way the motion read, at least.
Thanks, Paul. And you can keep talking because you are up next with your building committee presentation and update.
Right. So I'll share the presentation we did last night at the community forum. As I go along, Jim, Mike, Claudia, and Chris, if you want to as well, always jump in and add things as we go. I won't belabor the things we've talked about a great deal in the past, but so let me share that. Is everybody able to see that? All right.
Yes.
So this is the presentation we did last night at a community forum. We actually had a decent turnout for the ones that were actually participating in Zoom. Probably had between 35 and 40, depending on the time. Ed did float a little bit. Community members show up. So let's go through. I do always want to publicly thank the committee members. It's a lot more work than people probably realize to do this, and we've been at it for a few years now, and so they've put a lot of work to get where we are. And then of course the project team as well. So a lot of you have seen this before. This is just a general rendering of what the site would look like, labeling the different spaces. I won't go into it too much, but this kind of is a good overview of particularly the outdoor learning spaces. This is probably a good slide to talk about that. We have the indoor courtyard that's in the middle of the building there. There's an outdoor space on the east side of the building by the academic houses. And then there's also a rooftop off the media center that will also be available for, you know, an outdoor space to get outside and do whatever kind of learning we want to do out there. So we have, that's one of the exciting things about this is now we have the opportunity to design something where really the entire site is the school. It's not just the classrooms and the box that is the school, and that it's really just thoughtful. The whole thing is just much more well integrated and thoughtful, and so I think that's pretty exciting. The keys on this, and I don't know if this, I assume this doesn't block it, but I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can see the. So what this one is just a top level view. What is really crucial to think about when you look at this one are what we're going to do to alleviate the traffic issues we've seen and also the safety issues we have with the drop off and pickup. Now, instead of all these cars queuing up on Concord Street, creating just a mess in the morning, we will have a lot of queuing space here for parent drop off. So right around the parking lot there, we're going to have enough to store, is it 270 cars, Jim? I can't recall the linear feet and how that relates to vehicles. That number jumps out at me as the number. So we can handle a lot of cars on site queuing around there. And even with utilizing that, the staff and everybody will still be able to access the parking lot. And then we're going to have a completely distinct and separate bus drop-off loop. So this loop here is going to be able to drop off students. Now they're going to be completely separate. It's just going to be a lot safer, a lot more efficient, a lot less impact to the community. So that's one of the things that's really great about this slide, to show that linear footage of what we're doing to take and relieve that stress from the road and bring it on site. So the next ones are about how we are going to do it. How do we build the building while continue to operate the existing building? So this is just an aerial photo The red line is the property line of Mendez. And then it'll kind of overlay onto this what the phasing for the school look like. So the first phase is securing the construction area. So that's that red dotted line. That will be a security fence locked and secured. And then we will create an access road over to Fisk Road. Now that was something that we had multiple conversations with the neighbors up on Goodnow and Fisk up there. They had some concerns regarding having an access road over there. So our initial renderings, they didn't pay much attention to the angle of the road as in the rendering, but the intent was always for all traffic exiting the site and coming to the site to be using Concord and not going up Fisk to Upland. So in these, we've shown it actually directing the right way. So the goal there is that no traffic related to this site is going to be traveling beyond that access road up Fisk at all. So from that perspective, they should see no traffic. We'll also, work with the neighbors on any other mitigation steps they feel is important for the safety. We're going to put in conditions around the time at which that gate can be open and vehicles can come and go, so that any students walking from up there don't have to deal with any traffic related to the construction site. So we won't be allowing vehicles or anything like that entering or exiting during drop off and pickup or anything like that. So phase one is securing that area there, creating that access. The secondary emergency access is down here in this corner at the end of the current Mendez. We did speak with the neighbors quite a little bit about that, because if you look at it, it says, why can't that be the main entrance? And there's lots of reasons why we couldn't do that. One of the which, and probably the most compelling, is there's just not enough space, because if you understand what we need emergency access to the back of the building here. So that means we need to get a fire truck through here and through along the back of the building. So if we did that, and then we tried to get a gate here, and then something that could potentially have construction vehicles and everything like that, there's just not enough room there, for one. And then there's also the segregation and safety while the school is operating. But we went through that with them. The neighbors we met with understood and appreciated. We had the conversations. Certainly a good question for them to have. It's perfectly valid. And if you just look at it, you're like, well, why can't you fit a truck through there? But when we have to go through all the measures for safety and things like that, then it becomes obvious. This is also where all the utilities for the new building will come through. This pinch point right here between the building and the property line. Eversource came out. There's not this, we can't run electrical or anything from Fisk and things like that. So they have to come from Concord through that area. So that's the other. So there's just so much going on in that little pinch point that we couldn't, this does make the most sense off Fisk Road, but it wasn't our first choice, but it is the right choice.
Paul, can I just
secure that area? Then and they'll start to build and construct the new building. The groundbreaking will be, pending a successful vote, would be next fall. That's where we would be able to start the site work on the space behind Mendez.
Paul, can I ask you one question before you leave the slide?
Sure.
One of the other concerns I heard from some folks that are over in that Fisk Road neighborhood was sort of what the access point that you're drawing off of Fisk Road, what happens there after the project is done. And there was a concern about, that's all pretty heavily wooded. And I don't know, I mean, I don't live in the area. It's not a particular concern, but I'm just curious if that concern has been voiced by the neighbors, and if so, if there's been a satisfactory resolution to it.
Yeah, so, and I'll talk about it more when we get to the slide where that is removed. But the interesting thing about that area is if you walk in the woods there, it's actually not a very healthy wooded area, unfortunately. But our goal is to leave it better than we found it. So we have, the team has budgeted for whatever we want to do there, right? And we're going to work through with the neighbors to determine what that is, right? You know, part of me would love to see a walking path through there. I don't see that as being feasible, though, not because we don't want to do it, but because it would need to be ADA compliant, and there's a decent grade there, so that would pose a significant challenge. But that is going to be an ongoing conversation, as is all the mitigation steps during construction. That'll be an ongoing. All the neighbors will have my contact information, our OPM's contact information, the construction manager's contact information, so that if there are any concerns, if some construction vehicle is not following the rules and they see it, we're going to deal with that. So it'll be an ongoing process throughout the project, and we look to be very communicative with them and collaborative with them throughout the process.
Thank you, Paul.
But that has been voiced, and part of it is like, well, you say that now that won't be, that access point won't be there. How do we how do we know that that's the case? And what I tell them is, take the construction on Main Street right now. That went through a permitting process with the planning board, and they didn't do it the way they said they were. And what happened? They had to stop and they had to redo work. So this will go through a standard special permit process with the planning board, and the plans will say what the end state is. And just like any other project, we have to do what we say we're going to do, or go before the planning board to alter that. And so I can assure everyone that wouldn't be an access point, but those concerns have been voiced, and we'll continue to address any other questions that come up too. So that's phase one. Now we have built the building back there. We've started to construct the part of the parking lots. And then what happens over the summer of 2023 is you'll see now we finish off this parking area. Fisk Road temporarily over the summer only, where there's only going to be admin people coming in and things like that, becomes the main entrance, while they continue to work on and finish the parent drop-off loop in the main entrance. So this next phase shows what the opening of the school would look like. So at this point, we've finished the main parking lot and the main entrance. So the parent loop is there. The bus drop-off loop is not there yet. The main play space is not there yet. So we'll have to be able to leverage the outdoor spaces here for running around and things like that. We're going to prioritize, obviously, certain things like the play space and whatnot. But at this point, the race is really, so if I go back here, the race over the summer, and this is where some of the phasing and some of the timing things really come into play. We need, in order to open in fall of 2023, we need the summer. This is a lot of work to start to demo the building, the old building at its ends, so we can construct the loop road and finish this parking area and the main plaza. So this is the opening of the school, where this is complete. The loop road is complete. The loop road will double as the access point for the buses. So there will be some coordination with buses and cars here, but that's us, as I'm sure Claudia will attest to. This little dance here is a lot nicer than what they're doing now. So much easier to negotiate that than what they're doing. So then this is through this next spring is when all of this will be completed, obviously prioritizing the different areas and things like that. Now everything is complete with the caveat that the ball fields will require one full growing season. So we wouldn't be able to use these right away because they will be a natural surface and need time to grow. I know I spent a lot of time on that, but I think that's an important one for particularly everyone here to understand how it is that we are going to be able to build the building while keeping the other school operational. Any other phasing questions?
Yeah, Paul, did I miss it on the last one, the last slide? Is that when the old school comes down? When does that factor in?
So this was the first one where we built the new building
Yeah.
behind it. It's that summer.
Right
So
here,
summer
okay.
of 2023, we
Okay.
demolished the building starting at its ends.
Okay,
We're not even probably done demolishing and abating the building when they need to get working on finishing the loop road over here and the parking lot
okay,
and main
thanks.
entrance. So this remains, and so you'll see that this one, it just shrinks that fence, goes from containing the loop road and also the parking lot to now only the bus drop off loop, the play area, the very front part of the plaza and the ball fields.
Great. Thanks.
And this is also, at this point, once this entrance is done, that's when we remove the entrance on Fisk Road. So this is still shown here. It just basically, it doesn't have the road. So it's colored like, hey, yeah, that swath is still going to be there. Well, this is then when we'll talk about the remediation. Now, the remediation, because this is all a race to get this stuff done, the timing of that, I can't say when that's going to be remediated to what level. It'll certainly remain secure while it needs to. One other thing I'll say about that entrance road, and if I go back to here, so when this is a construction entrance, if you've gone on Fisk Road, there's the sidewalk, and then the wood, the tree line is actually set back probably 20, 30 feet from the road. The gate will be back at the tree line. So there will be lots of visibility. And we can work with the construction manager on all sorts of different mitigations there from a safety perspective. But it's not like the trucks are going to come out to this road and just surprise a pedestrian or something like that. There is a substantial space for good visibility there. So that's also beneficial. And we can certainly do anything we need to make sure that the visibility is even increased if necessary. Any other phasing slides before I go on? Okay. So Mike always likes to talk about this one, so I'll let Mike and Claudia. This is the academic houses and kind of, I love this slide because it kind of really just shows the engagement model. So I don't know if Claudia or Mike, you want to talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure folks have heard this before, but the thing that we like the most about this is the ability for our students to really collaborate with one another, and it will still allow for multi-grade opportunities as well as in-grade opportunities. So when you notice the academic houses are split in 3 different sections where our 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th graders are all split into groups of 5, but within the context of the wing, it's really a group of 10 classrooms, and those 10 classrooms can work together and are only separated by stairwells. And then those 5 classrooms that are grouped together in the pod will collaborate on a regular basis. And then we can also work within a multi-grade setting using that common area. So there can be a lot of opportunity for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to work together on the same floor. So we'll essentially have groups of 15 and groups of 15 on the 1st floor and the 2nd floor. So this really allows for us to do a number of different things and keep the students in one general portion of the building as well. No longer are we going to be sprawled across an entire building, but now we have this great area for learning. So we're very, very excited. And then the access to the outdoor classroom is also great. I forgot to say that last night at the forum, but it's so close to where some of our special education classrooms are. And we envision that those special education classrooms will have easy access to be able to go and utilize the garden space. So this setup is just very exciting for us. And it really shows that our team truly listened to the educational team and followed our plan. So this is about as good as we could possibly ask for, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I'll just jump in quickly too and say that, a couple of things about this. One of the real challenges in elementary education is really to provide common planning time for teachers, and just things as simple as being able to put them so close together is going to have certainly an impact. And then, we had our school site council meeting this week, and one of the goals that we'll be working on is what the grade level program looks like going forward without the neighborhood, and some of the things that we've learned from that in terms of mentorship and things we can take away. And certainly, again, this organization will support that. And we talked about that the other afternoon. So I couldn't be any more excited. And looking at some of the pictures tonight, Paul, when you look at it, from the sky, the overview there, and you look at how compact this is as compared to the existing building. And I mean, I do appreciate the fact that I get my steps in every day, but it's just amazing how that's going to change things. And this year, one thing some of the kiddos have said when we bring them someplace different in the building, especially our third graders, this week, a couple of them said, because we moved one of the rooms where some of them received some services, and they said, "Wow, I've never been down here." So, yeah. But
anyway, we've seen the presentations of the work that the educators in that building, along with Mike, have done and put together, and it's been, and I can hear it and I can understand it. What's exciting to me is this basically is a picture of what they've talked about, right? It literally is a graphical representation of the blend and the combination of the good things that have happened in both programs coming together. And it's a picture that it sums it up so nicely. And so it's a much more tangible, understandable thing than, I guess I understand probably a higher percentage of all the educational jargon that's thrown around with all these educational models and things. This is simple. Everybody can just grasp it, and it looks exciting to be. And so I just love the fact that, to Mike's point, this is in the embodiment of what everyone's been saying. And instead of, as I said, the educators in that building have done a great job despite the current building. Here, they're going to get a building that supports what they do. So that's just, to me, really the coolest part of this.
So half joking, half serious, and this question is more to Claudia, is like, are we going to be naming these houses like Hufflepuff and Gryffindor and whatnot? Are we going to come up with some cool names? But more seriously, are there, from the interior color scheme, are we following an Alice safety model where the hallway, each of these, so it looks like 6 separate floors would be color coded in a way for special security knowledge for first responders?
So we are at 25% design. The design, and particularly when you get down to finishes and colors, won't happen any, those are all discussions down in the future. So right now, the way, and I may believe we've talked about it before, but just for anybody listening, the purpose of getting to where we are now is to provide the estimators enough detail to provide accurate estimates. So we've gone through and said, okay, let's figure out, we want to use this type of material in these areas and things like that, such that they could price out what it is for this percentage of the building to be clad in this, that, or the other thing. But the details are what the design development that will occur over the summer would flesh out. And then subsequent to that, even, they'll be detailing down to color schemes and different things during the project. So this is the floor plan. So you see the academic houses here. This one's kind of embedded next to the inside courtyard, and then these two are over here. And you'll see that even within them, there's this small group space here. There's a little space out here. There's just so much that occurs outside of the classroom here, and it's all just been thoughtful like that. The other things that to me are really exciting is the integration with the specials being around here. So each floor has an art room. So we have 2 art rooms here. There's a math room, there's the distributed library called bookstore here. There's just so many things that are all integrated now, as opposed to what we've had with buildings, that all older buildings, right? They have the library that has morphed into media centers, but really how well does it perform that? Where here things will be more integrated throughout and also closer. So this is the first floor. And as we've shown before, on the left-hand side, the west side of the site becomes the community wing. So the gym, the CAF, the stage, right next to the play space, right next to the ball fields. So when this is not operating as a school, all those things are thoughtfully designed to be co-located, which also allows us from an efficiency and security perspective, if you're not using the academic spaces, we can shut them down, both locking them, but also reducing the load, electrical, heating, cooling loads there to be more efficient. The other thing the MSBA, as you know, makes us do is to understand this building, and Jim can speak to it. He probably got, when we were going through this process, got really sick of me asking him over and over again about our enrollment and whether we're comfortable with the enrollment certification we have and the space we have in this building. He assures me that we're good.
We are.
And I believe him. I don't mean to sound skeptical. So
627 as of today. You know.
So, but what the MSBA requires us to do is to plan and understand how we would expand should the need in the future arise. And so that's what this dotted line, it would be adding a 4th pod. And the design team, when they do all the engineering work, what they'll do is they'll make sure that there's the facilities, whether it be electrical and everything like that, to connect this to the building here, but also nothing underground here from utilities lines, anything like that, such that this would be a viable expansion point should the town ever need to do that. One of the questions, just as I'm talking about that has been asked multiple times, and it's a fair question, right? So this building is roughly 8,200 square feet larger than the current building. And so if one of the reasons we're doing this is overcrowding, what gives, right? You know, how are we not going to be overcrowded in a building that's only 8,200 square feet larger? So just to very briefly speak to that, the reason, there's multiple reasons. One is just space efficiency. There is a lot of wasted space at Mendez. There's very long hallways, everything's far apart. Here, everything is thoughtfully designed, compact, and co-located. Each classroom is larger to meet the current standards. But there's also no longer a large auditorium, right? So it's not really just 8,200 square feet larger. Our academic spaces and our learning spaces and all of our complementary spaces also taken that square footage. So it's substantially larger, but also not, the spaces are going to accommodate learning throughout the building, which is very difficult to do in Mendez right now. Not that they don't try to do it, not that they don't do it, but there's almost no space on this site where we couldn't be doing learning. So as I said, on the second floor, you see the art room here, the STEM project room and the media center that go out onto that roof space. And again, you still have that distributed library and things like that. Any questions on the floor plan before I keep on going? I think you've all seen it before. So then we have the watercolors.
Sorry, Paul, I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you go back? So what I'm noticing in the classrooms is there's not built-in closets. And is that something that would maybe come in later?
So right now we've just done budgeting, right? So I think Mike and Jim, you can correct me if I'm, we included built-ins in the budget, but we're going to work with our educators to see what they want.
Okay.
It's not as simple or straightforward of a question or answers as many people might think. Mike, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think that's a little further down the road than we are right now, but I do believe we have that budgeted in case we need them.
Yeah, at this point, we're keeping things on the truck that we haven't answered yet, and that was one of them. Whether we're doing cubbies, built-ins, lockers, what are we doing for that? And I know the educators have had a robust conversation about what they prefer, because it impacts what you can do in the space in the room for sure. So.
Okay.
So they've done some watercolor renderings for what the front would look like here. And so this is obviously looking from that main plaza right next to the play space to the front of the building. You can see the roof space there. And this is the greens to the east of the site, outside the academic houses, where you could have some outdoor learning, looking back at the academic houses. So we obviously have a resolution to be net zero by 2040 in Ashland. And so we from the onset of this project, we took that very seriously. And our RFP and RFIs went out, and we set an aggressive goal of 25 EUI. And that's simply a measure of the amount of energy per year your building consumes per square foot. So it's a metric that can scale with a building to, it doesn't matter your square footage, it's a per square foot measurement of the energy use intensity. That's what the EUI stands for. And this one is currently modeled to beat that at 24.5 EUI. So this the design currently has this being a net zero ready. The difference between net zero and net zero ready is just whether you have the renewables or not. So you go through the process of making the building very efficient. That's with you super insulate the walls, the slab, the roof. You make a very tight sealed building envelope. We have extra mounted sunshades to prevent solar heat gain, but while still allowing and controlling the natural light, things like that. And then this project has also been very conscious to make a concerted effort to try to be very sustainable in our heating and cooling. So we have 42 geothermal wells that should be able to accommodate the majority of the peak load for the year. Then we have supplemental gas-fired boiler and water and a chiller for the peak heating and cooling needs. But that should not occur very often. So this will most of the time, overwhelming majority of the year, we will not see peak times where the geothermal will not be able to handle the load. And so this is a graph I put together to try to help understand what it means and what we do and how it impacts things. So the bars on the left-hand side, the blue bars is our electrical consumption from the grid. And then the orange bar next to it is the greenhouse gas emissions for the site as designed with no photovoltaics on site. So what you'll see, if you compare this one to the second one from the right, is what a typical MSBA school would be. And that doesn't, I'm not saying typical, we don't have typical on here to be demeaning or anything, because a typical MSBA school has to be LEED certified and beat the energy code by 20%. So that's still an efficient building. So if you look at this compared to what we've designed, some people might say, well, hold on a second, you're consuming more electricity from the grid. What's going on? Well, that's because of our choice to go geothermal. If we didn't go geothermal and we used primarily natural gas for heating, we, from a carbon footprint and in a greenhouse gas emission perspective, would be trapped. There's nothing we could do there. So what we're shifting is we're shifting the energy consumption from something that is not sustainable and renewable over to electric, which is sustainable and renewable. Now, the greenhouse gases here are primarily computed based on the grid and how the sustainable the grid is right now. That will only increase as time goes on. But as you see, we walk from the as designed with no photovoltaics to just roof. Look at that, how that knocks that down. And then if we did with both roof and parking photovoltaics, you see we end up at net zero. So that's what this is meant to show. If we went and we did a typical MSBA school, this line here represents the greenhouse gas emissions relative to the natural gas consumption for the project, right? So that's what this 1.3 here represents is, hey, the natural gas we might use for heating, cooling, and things like that on a bad year would be down there. But what this represents is this goes up to a typical MSBA school at 65.3. Now that's metric tons, but of greenhouse gases. But that's the part right here. There'd be nothing we could possibly do about when it comes to greenhouse gases and our carbon footprint. So that investment into and shift from natural gas to the geothermal electric provides us this path to truly get to net zero, both from an energy production perspective, but also from a carbon emission and carbon footprint perspective. And then we also have just what a code baseline is. So you'll see the code baseline here and the MSBA school beating that by over 20%. So like I said, that typical MSBA school is still a very efficient school because our baseline, our stretch energy codes in Massachusetts are some of the most aggressive and best in the nation. So this just kind of is a graphical representation of what it actually means and what our investment into the efficiency and sustainability of the project really do for us. I know I talked a lot about that. Is there any questions on this particular slide?
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. So the net zero part that you're showing, if we says as designed and with the roof and the parking, if that would be extra to the town if we add those photovoltaics to the roof and the parking.
Correct. Yeah. So so just like when you would for your home, if you went out and you purchased solar for your house, you make the upfront investment, and then you over time reap the cost savings or cost avoidance, whatever people want to call it. I know there's been some scuttlebutt around, hey, it's not really savings, whatever the case is. I don't want to get into semantics, but so and just to give you some point of reference on that, if we were to make that investment with the very conservative estimates we had during this part of the project, and again, very crude estimates on the amount of solar you could get, what the energy production would be, and a potential cost. And the cost has gone down for it substantially. So it would be better than this, but I have it calculated that that investment would pay off between 8 and 13 years. And then after that, we'd be saving $120,000 a year if we invested in both roof and parking solar. So it's definitely worth a conversation.
Amazing.
At some point when it makes sense, whether it's day one of the project. This project is going to be designed to be able to accommodate that. So all the conduit and everything like that will be in place to accept solar on the roof, and where it's feasible, conduit will be run under the parking lot to different locations so that minimally invasive work can be done to do canopies if we do that in the future.
Great. Thanks, Paul.
So, and this is just a textual slide that talks about, sums up what we just talked about, that, hey, we had the resolution, then, and that this one is roughly 26% more efficient than that already efficient MSBA school. So that's pretty good. The other thing that it does is the Eversource has just come out with a new net zero program for large buildings. And it's a very aggressive one. You have to be 25 EUI or below. You have to be below 25 EUI. So we qualify for that program. They already have another program, and just to give you a context. So the difference between the programs is the previous program that we would qualify for. You could get up to, depending on where you ended up with your efficiency, you could get up to $1.25 per square foot rebate from Eversource. So in our project, we're just under 105,000 square feet. So $135,000, whatever it is. With this new program, if the final design that goes into construction, if it's constructed, if what is designed and constructed models at below 25 EUI, then you get that $1.25 per square foot rebate at that point. If after commissioning a full year of usage, you actually achieve it, you then can get another $1 per square foot. So none of our finances or anything like that builds in any of these type of rebates, but that's just what is available to us because of the goals we set for this. And it also talks about the 20% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from a typical MSBA school. So any other sustainability questions before we move on? So we're very lucky. We have a really good solid team. It's been ingrained in our discussions from the get-go, and we have one of the best consultants working on it with us. So we're very fortunate that way. So unless somebody wants, I'm not going to play the animation. People can do that. Do you want me to play the animation? Anybody want me to play the animation?
No, that's okay. I don't think so.
All right. So then this just gets to the schedule review. So this just talks about where we are, and this is the next thing coming up is town meeting and election vote, and then it kind of talks about where we will be, design development through the summer, permitting and Q2, Q3, construction documents, and then early bid packages to start site work in October, November timeframe to beat the frost. 20 months of construction. That's when we move into the building, right? And then we begin that demo abatement and that finished work we saw in the phasing. And the remaining 11 months where we finish the fields and things like that.
Well, what do the stars and different colored bars mean?
I think the different colored bars are just representative of different things. So like the schematic design, this is all project teamwork, the green bars. Permitting is town permitting. So going before planning board, Concom, all the different things we need to do. The stars represent particular things, like the blue bars are town related things. So this is the town meeting vote and election. This one's where the town moves in. And then this is from the construction manager, the different site packages and different things we start. And then the construction is this one. So I just try to break it out. There's not a legend for it. It's not necessarily consistent with anything else we're doing. It's just to break it up, I think.
So Paul, if I'm reading this right, the move-in date would be September of 2023. Is that students?
No. So move-in is June, July 2023. So that's when we move in, admin's in there, everybody's getting ready. The school opened for students in September 2023 as scheduled.
Okay.
But this move-in is we commission the building, it's got its occupancy permit, admin moves in and, you know, work in earnest to get ready for students.
Has Flansburgh, like when you look at this schedule, has Flansburgh given you any sense of how much these dates tend to push during the process?
So there's a couple of things at play here. They're all, the whole team is confident in these dates, understanding they're aggressive dates. We've throughout this process, we've kept our foot down, right? We've not let up. So this is achievable. It's an aggressive but achievable time frame. And what's key is two things. A, we are doing a construction manager at risk delivery method. That means, well, last night we had a building committee meeting before the forum where we formed a construction manager selection subcommittee. That construction manager is, so we will today win an advertisement for applicants to start to submit for this project. That process will continue, and we will get a project manager on, a construction manager on early this spring.
Okay.
And they'll be part of the team going through this. And what that does is it helps to tighten up everything. It's the construction manager. They are the ones constructing the building, but they're part of the team earlier on, as opposed to, and it's not to, both delivery methods are fine. So I don't want to make this sound like the public safety building went design, bid, build. So they draw the building, they have the construction documents, they have everything detailed, and then they put it out to bid, lowest bidder wins. You basically purchase the building. And then you go that route. You've done all the design work up until then. So there's not a lot of collaboration on the front side of that. So there's, on that delivery method, there's more potential for slippage of dates, change orders, different things. Whereas with this delivery method, they're on earlier and they're part of the decision-making process. And if they said, hey, listen, right now, if we shift these things around, I can bring the dates in, or I can be more efficient here or there. Those conversations can happen before a construction on a particular phase is initiated. So they feel comfortable with the dates, knowing that, you know, it's not a lax schedule, but it's achievable.
Okay. And I know this is a minor detail, but now that I'm doing the math, I realize I'm the only board member that will have a child. So Griffin would spend his 5th grade year in this building. So in the construction, obviously, like when you showed us the construction map, that eliminates the playground on the backside of the building. Is there anything that's going to be temporarily constructed out front to compensate? So when the kids are in school for those 2 years, that there is some sort of physical structure for them to play on?
We haven't discussed that in detail. Certainly, they'll need to use the front fields. I mean, this is a large project, so we can potentially talk about work with Claudia and the admins on what's possible there. We obviously don't want to invest a lot of money in something that is temporary, but we do want to make sure we're providing the kids what they need. So.
We did put it on their plate too, Paul, one night.
Yeah, no, I know we've talked about it, just not in a lot of detail. We haven't arrived anywhere with that. But we will continue to have that conversation.
Thanks.
This just talks about some of the milestone dates. That just kind of is textual representation of some of the things that were there. Funding approval, I gave an update after this happened in October. So the MSBA board did approve the scope and budget of the project. We have signed and executed the first part of the scope and budget agreement. The next one is January 23rd. That's town meeting. It starts at 10 o'clock. The town moderator has published the procedures that they'll be using. And just for anyone that's listening, People do not need to come and sit through the presentations. They do not need to be there for the discussion. The voting will be kept open after voting starts, and so people can come to the high school just to vote and then leave if that's what they want to do. That is a legislative body, so there is no other provision for that. I know people have talked about that. If we had a representative town meeting, they have allowed that to be virtual, but that's, for lots of other different reasons that they're able to control that and execute that differently. So after that, we will also have a special townwide election where there will be 2 ballot questions for that. Both need to pass for this to go forward. Just from I think a lot of people don't understand what the votes mean. So our legislative body, that is where we appropriate and authorize the funding. So authorize the treasurer to borrow that money and appropriate it to this purpose. The vote on the 27th is the one that gives us the ability to raise the tax levy above the Prop 2.5 level to service that debt. So that's the function of those two votes and why they're different and why both are necessary. So I think we've all seen this before. This is a high-level breakdown of the project cost. So the building construction, the site work, the furniture, equipment, and technology. You might hear us say FF&E. That is essentially a budget line item for if you picked up the building, shook it, everything that would fall out. So that is the way this is calculated. This isn't via an estimator. This is a budget we set. The MSBA participates for first $2,400 per student. I think we were, let's see, I want to say we were at $3,200 a student, which isn't a lot. It is kind of smack dab in the middle of where most places land when it comes to this. The MSBA knows you cannot furnish a building and provide technology for $2,400 a student. They don't expect you to do that. They expect people to be over that margin. Design consultant fees, project management fees, and then other administrative costs include there's insurances in there and different things. We also have $3.5 million of contingencies. So if we don't spend it, that is just savings. We don't need to worry about that. So we've already appropriated and borrowed the money for the feasibility study. So the appropriation was $1 million. I'll just be clear. We didn't borrow $1 million. We only borrowed our percentage of that, which was $475,000. And so the appropriation for this town meeting is going to be 83,387, not the 84,387, because we've already been appropriated that first $1 million. And of that, the MSBA is committing just over $26 million. And depending upon what happens in the project and other eligible unforeseen change orders or unforeseen changes to the project, could go up just above $27 million. Any high level costs, there's a more detailed slide that kind of breaks down things a little bit more. So this one just talks a little bit about what our reimbursement rate is, how that reimbursement rate was constructed, but then also what the effective reimbursement rate is. So our base reimbursement rates based on our socioeconomic status and data got us to 52.26. We will certainly hit all the energy efficiency and green points, so that'll give us another 2%. And they do grade each town on how well they maintain their buildings. And so we were rated as good, and that netted us another 1.31%. So we're arriving at the 55.57. Now, our effective will not be 55.57. So an effective rate would be just simple math. Hey, our project cost us X. We do, you know, and we take that and we say, okay, what percentage was ours and what percentage was the MSBA. The MSBA will not be at 55.57% for the whole project cost. They'll most likely be between 32 and 35%. And that might change a bit as far as getting better given the current conditions, but that's where it currently lands. And why is there a difference? Because the MSBA has several caps that it implements on projects. And the reason for the caps is their goal is to do as many projects as they can and to do them as equitably as possible. Now, the first one is a cap on the per square foot cost. So they only participate in the first $333 a square foot cost. You can't build anything for $333 a square foot. We all know that. This hasn't been updated in several years. It's been more than 2 years because this slide hasn't changed in a year. So I know it's at least 3 years. But so that will be, you know, the next slide will show you a little more on that. The site costs that exceed 8% of the building costs. So they'll only participate in the first 8% of the site costs relative to the building cost. That is to, in their mind, be equitable between a urban school that doesn't have a lot of site and our suburban ones that have a large site. And ours has a large site. We're touching over 16 acres on this. And so that's one of the real drivers that changes our effective reimbursement rate. So then there's the $2,400 a student I mentioned, and then the soft cost and all these other ones, right? You know, we are below these caps, and obviously the construction change orders, we haven't begun construction, so we don't have any of those yet. So other things that impact the budget, they do not, their space template says an elementary school can have a 6,000 square foot gym. Our current gym is 8,000 square feet. And just to give you an idea of what 6,000 would be like, in a 6,000 square foot gym, if you were to put a regulation basketball court in there, you're not really going to be able to have any spectators. It'll be very tight. So we're investing in something that is really a community asset. And so we thought that keeping the gym at its existing size, having bleachers, being able to rent it out more, be able to just be an asset for the town was the right thing to do. There's also an extended day office for our extended day program that they're allowing in the project, but they won't be participating in reimbursement for. But you know, that's an important program for us, so you know, that's something we wanted to invest in. Another thing that just affects some of the money that comes from them is we did have a roof project, and so they do cost recovery on what they believe is a full life expectancy of that roof. So we're decommissioning that building, we're demoing it before realizing that full life cycle. And again, the other costs, the site. We have a 16-acre, we're touching and manipulating 16 acres, very large area. So that's a big one. We also are, you know, making an investment to make sure we have a very efficient net zero ready building. And so that there is a slight premium to that as well. This might be an eye chart, but for anybody that wants to really understand how we arrive at 32% and why we got there, you'll see for the feasibility study, their reimbursement of that is right on 55.57, 100% of eligible. And for the most part, a lot of them are pretty reasonable. They are in the 40s and above. The two big ones are the construction costs and the site work. You'll see that the site work, because of that 8% cap, they're only participating and reimbursing just over 13% of that cost. So that really drives down that effective reimbursement rate. And there's nothing we can do about that. That's not a design issue. That's just, hey, we have, it's in one aspect a very good problem to have. We have a beautiful site, and it'll be a beautiful site when we're done, but that's primarily on our dime. They will not participate in much of that. And then again, the construction cost, that's that per square foot. cost, and that brings us down to 32.52. But again, these are all based on estimates. We plan on beating the budget, so we expect to do better than 32% effective rate, but this is where the numbers lie right now. And this is the cost recovery for that roof project right there in red. Any questions on this?
Well, just if we beat budget, do we realize the budget savings, or is that a split between MSBA and the town based on the percentages on the chart?
It's our savings because we're so far above these caps. I mean, I guess it depends on which area it is, right? If it's in an area where we have, if it was, one like the feasibility where, hey, we saved money, but with all of it's eligible and we haven't surpassed a cap, then no, it will be reduced and we both save. But as it relates to construction costs, site work, and those different things where we are over the cap, that just comes, that's our savings.
So as an example, like looking at the construction contingency near the bottom, in order for this cost, the savings to be shared, it would have to come to a number below the 2.234. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So.
Or 677.
Yeah, I know you just kind of chose it somewhat at random. You chose an interesting one. So.
Sorry.
The construction contingencies, for those to be eligible, so this is the maximum amount that's eligible, and this is their participation. But that's only if we have a change order that actually was eligible. So I want to preface it with that because you picked one that was a little odd. So, but yeah, so if it's one that we've exceeded the cap, and so I'll be probably a simpler one, site work, right? They're participating in almost none of it, right? And so all the savings here. So if we budgeted 12.4, if it comes in at 10, that 2.4 is ours. And the budget and the overall cost of the project can be reduced or reallocated, right? So if we realize substantial savings, we can then have a conversation about, does it make sense to really get a firm proposal for the solar and include it as part of the project? Because like I said, that is a very compelling from a cost savings perspective. And it might, depending on the financing, it might be something that is net neutral to even the tax base, because the savings might be able to be used to help offset some of that debt service. But I'm not committing to doing anything like that or anything but that's what could happen with those. If we were to somehow go down below $3 million, then it would be split. But we're well above those caps, and so anywhere, and those will be where the primary savings will be, if there's any, is in the construction site work. So those savings would be ours.
Okay. So realistically, it would be highly unlikely that anything is going anywhere except to the town's bottom line.
Correct. It would be marginal if there was other places. So none of the other places are big numbers, right?
Yeah.
That's this. In the big numbers here that are real, it's like $67 million of it is the big numbers that we've exceeded the caps. So. Any other questions on this? And feel free to look at this. This kind of describes the different things here about what they are and gives more detail on that. But I put this together just to try to really, because everybody's like, well, why is it 32%? Well, this is exactly why it's 32% per category, and why, like I said, most of the categories were above 40, but those two are the big ones. And it's why the MSBA can take on as many projects as they do. But I'd really like to see the construction, that to be adjusted, because I just don't think, I think that could be higher and take on one or two less projects, but, have more of an impact on a community, because a lot of communities, their base rate is still higher, but they're still only getting the base rate for the 333. That is uniform. They could be 100% in reimbursement, but they're paying for, if they have $600 a square foot, they're paying for the $269 a square foot 100% on their own, no help. So it's kind of one of those things where if it's not a reasonable number, those communities where they even have a high base rate from the MSBA, I don't see it as equitable because they don't get an opportunity. They can't afford the opportunity to get the better building, the more efficient building, right? Because the MSBA, aside from that 2%, which is okay, they're not really right now incentivizing in a real way things like what we're doing with our energy efficiency.
Paul, have these estimates begun to include the change in materials pricing that we've seen as a result from COVID?
Well, so it's a very interesting question you have. And if I may, I'll delay it till, is it the next slide? No. Let me delay answering that till a couple of slides to the why now.
Okay,
because
if you could go, then if you want to delay that, go back, and it's not necessarily about the budget. I think it's back 2 slides. I just wanted to point out, yeah, here, how impressed and happy I am to see a mother's room, and that nursing and teaching are 2 of the hardest professions to keep a breastfeeding relationship with your child. And so to know that we will now have a dedicated room and that teachers aren't running to their cars or doing it in the bathroom, like that just is, it's very, very nice to know that we are going to be supporting our teachers in that way.
Yes, and that's in an area, so a lot of people don't know what a grossing factor is. So part of the gross, so it's a difference between a net square foot and a gross square foot. So the grossing factor is the portion of the building that it accommodates all the ancillary spaces, the hallway spaces, the utility rooms, different other things. And so we are absorbing the mother's room into that as a part of the program. So we're not asking for it as a separate space to the MSBA where they have to say yes or no to, as well as we did ask them for a second bathroom in the nurses suite. They don't currently support that, which I think is crazy. But so that is another thing that we're absorbing into the program via the grossing factor. So we'll have, whether it's inside or just outside or co-located with the nurses suite, a second bathroom.
Fantastic.
Anything else on that?
Mm.
Okay. So now we get to the meat and potatoes for what people care about, right? What does this mean to taxpayers? So this slide here is a graph that's related to the debt excluded portion of people's taxes. So this is not, so if you look at this, think of below this baseline here, all your normal property taxes. The ones that are bounded by Prop 2.5 go up accordingly. What you're seeing above the baseline here are debt excluded projects. And what debt excluded projects are is exactly what we're doing here. It's what we did for the high school, the renovations on the library, renovations on town hall. It's where we borrow some money to do a project, and above that tax levy, we raise it to service that debt, or essentially make the payments to pay down that debt. So what this is attempting to do is seeing what people are paying now. Last year, the average assessed home value, which it shows down here, we're using as $427,163, paid of their tax bill, $307 of it. And I say tax bill, probably should stop saying that, of their yearly taxes. These are all yearly numbers, not a quarterly tax bill or anything like that. So $307 of their yearly taxes went to service the excluded debt for previous projects. And that includes the high school, library, the town hall, and other things. There's Valentine Estate, all the different things on there. Then what we show is in FY22, this next year, what it would look like for the two building projects for this homeowner. Now, I intentionally made sure, I want to be very upfront with people because I don't want to have a slide that just showed Mendez. That's disingenuous. The ask at town meeting and the ballot is two building projects, and they're both very important. So you can't talk about one without the other as it relates to tax impact. So this graph then takes and overlays both those projects over time on top of the current excluded debt. And you'll see as the previous debt gets paid off, and that's the one, this is the one part of your taxes that can go down. This is a temporary raise of above the tax levy to pay for that debt service. So the debt service for next year will be $90 a year for this homeowner. For Mendez, it'll be $9. Now the assumptions on that are at the bottom. I won't go over that in excruciating detail. The next year, again, $90 for public safety, $44 for Mendez. The next year, $90 and $80. But you'll see, particularly in FY24, that the combination of both projects is actually lower. You know, the combination of the previous excluded debt and both projects is actually lower than what they paid this year because those projects are coming off the books. And then in FY25, you see the Mendez price jump up to the full amount. And the reason for that, just to make sure, for the public safety, they're borrowing everything up front. The construction schedule is like 14 months. And it's a very different process. The process we're going through with this project is a little bit more elongated, but we also have the MSBA reimbursement occurring. So the FY22, it shows us borrowing $6 million, and that's for the beginning of the site work, the design development with the design team and consultants. But as we go, the reimbursement from MSBA is occurring regularly. So what happens is we pay an invoice, and then we submit it to the state, and the MSBA pays that about 45 to 60 days in arrears. So continually, we're going to be getting that reimbursement. They don't wait to the end of the project. They don't delay it. So, and they don't try to even it out through the project either. What they do is once you get to 90 to 95% of the eligible reimbursement in a category, that's when they'll stop the reimbursements within that category. So for site costs, if we were capped at, I don't remember what it was, $3 million, we will get the first 2.6, 2.8 of reimbursement as right when we submit it. So a lot of the reimbursement has ended up being front-ended in the project. That allows us to maintain a cash flow and not have to borrow a lot up front. And so we borrow $6 million the first year, 25 the second, 25 the third, and then the whole amount is bonded for the remaining 27 years. And so that's why it's staggered like that and delayed a bit. And that's also important for some of the conversation coming up. Any questions on the slide and what it means? All right. So I'm not going to reiterate this, but this slide, for people that want to look at it and read it, it just goes over the debt exclusion, exactly what I just described as to why the full tax impact is until FY25, and why do we have the public safety building on there. And you know, hopefully people appreciate that we're not, have blinders on to the other things that are going on in town. And this has been a very collaborative effort anyway. So all the numbers have always been together. So we need both these projects. So
yeah, I'm sorry, Paul, to interrupt. I thought that's a really good slide that you had with the two projects on there. I think it was really useful, so people have the information right in front of them.
Yeah, thanks. So that graph showed the average assessed value, but what does it mean for me? That's what you get all the time. So this slide just kind of describes, so it outputs what the incremental tax rate is for Mendez, shows you an example of how to compute that. It doesn't try to tell you what the net is, because remember, the other excluded debt is coming down. So this is all FY25 numbers here, and then it also gives the tax rate for both if you want to do that. What I'll say for anyone listening that I mentioned it on Facebook in the responses, I'll provide all this information if it's either all Greek to people, they just don't want to wrap their head around it. I am happy to create a custom report with that graph customized to anyone's home value, so people can reach out to me, and I'm happy to do that for them. I have a report that I can generate for any particular house. So now I'll address what you were mentioning, Aaron, for that, because that's something I've heard quite a little bit about, this material cost, everything like that. And, you know, that might be the case when you're talking about, hey, people's home improvement projects, whatever the case is. And it might have been the case earlier, but right now, that's not what we're seeing. So the public safety building project just got their bids in just after Christmas. And it was a Christmas present to them, because the estimates from their estimators on the construction costs were about 29 million. The low bid came in at 22. So what we're seeing is actually a very favorable bidding market and construction market as it relates to cost. So I've seen that a lot, and the reality is right now we're not seeing an increase in cost. We're actually seeing a very competitive market. So as it relates to that project, they're still retaining more in contingency. So they're not trying to reduce the ask by the full 7 million, knowing that they're in that design bid build process. A low bidder can try to, get some more change orders in for things that maybe you think should have been included, but that's part of the process. And so you build those into contingencies. So even with taking over another $1 million in contingency from that, they've been able to lower the total project budget of that for that project by over 15%. But so I hope that answered that portion of it for you, Aaron.
Thank you.
So this is a big question. It's the obvious question, right? We're, been saying we're in the middle of a pandemic. Well, hopefully we're not in the middle of it anymore. Hopefully we're, towards we can see the light, hopefully, coming down the line. We still have, not awesome numbers around the country and here in Massachusetts, but, it's not the middle anymore. So I'm going to not say the middle anymore, but we're in a pandemic still. And the pandemic has affected a lot of people in a lot of ways. And we understand that, and we really sympathize with that. So why now? That's the question we get all the time. Well, particularly as it relates to this project, what we've shown is we're asking for the decision right now. But as we saw, the impact to the taxpayer over the next couple of years is minimal. And so by the time the full cost of this hits the taxes, we're in FY 2025, 3.5 years from now. And so we're really talking about a decision for the future, right, as it relates to that impact. So that's one key part about it. There's also what we just talked about with the public safety building. Now, while there's lots of challenges with doing almost anything right now, whether it be holding our public meetings, whatever we're doing presents challenges right now. But it also presents us with an amazing opportunity. I'm not going to say our construction costs are going to be, percentage-wise just as low as what they got. What I know is right now is a great opportunity to be in our position where we can move forward with a project and get favorable bids and potentially substantial savings, right? So even if we realize the same dollar amount savings on a project that's twice the cost, then that's huge. That's huge for us, right? So it's a real big opportunity from that perspective. And also delaying even a few months, as we saw with that phasing slides, we miss some windows. We potentially don't get our site packages and start our breaking ground before the freeze next winter. And then that pushes things out. And now we don't have that summer to finish up the main entrance and get a building ready to open. So how that then impacts us, without incurring probably substantial phasing costs, it probably pushes us out another year. So even a couple of months really has an impact on it from that perspective. And then there's just increased cost. And that increased cost could mean that it costs exactly what we budgeted today. But that probably likely means it's higher than if we decide to go forward right now. So regardless, delaying it increases the cost. And if we weren't in the situation we are right now, the typical annual escalation cost for buildings is 3 to 5%. So that's a couple $1 million every single year on a project like this. So why now? Because while it's challenging to do a lot of what we do, it presents us with an incredible opportunity to save a lot of money. And the one thing I haven't mentioned here is, if people recall previous graphs we've shown, and they're like, hold on a second, 387, that's not what you said last time. Well, it isn't what I said last time. I believe it was 437 last time. And there's a reason for the change. We've been very conservative in all the numbers we've used to create these estimates. And what we've done here is, first, I assume most people have heard by now, the town just got reaffirmed at a AAA bond rating, which wasn't a guarantee given what's going on in Middlesex County right now. So that's great news. And when Michael looked at what the current true interest rate for long-term lending for AAA, or long-term borrowing, I should say, for AAA rated municipalities, he was seeing it at for November, it was 1.25%. I mean, it is historic lows for borrowing right now. And so what we had in our previous slides, we had been using a very conservative 3% for the interest rate. All I did for this was change 3% down to 2%. What did that do? That knocked $50 off the average annual tax bill. $50 on this tax bill went from 437 to 387. It saves over the term $9.5 million, $350,000 a year, just by reducing it from 3 to 2. And 2 is still conservative. If we can lock in a rate, it will probably be below that. If we get at 1.5, that's an additional $4.5 million savings over the term. So that is incredible savings for the town, or cost reduction, cost avoidance, whatever people want to call it. But that's where we see right now is we see an amazing opportunity to get incredibly low borrowing rates and potential savings on construction costs, which allows us to just save the taxpayers a lot of money and reduce that impact to the taxes. So that's why this slide is one of the crucial ones right now. It's a very valid question of why now, and hopefully that is compelling enough for people to support the project, because this is incredibly important. And right now, if we realize a substantial savings, that 32 to 35%, could go higher as far as what the ratio the state is contributing to the project. Their number isn't going to change. It's still going to be $26.2 to $27 million, but our savings could be substantial, and certainly our debt savings can be very substantial right now, given the rates.
Paul, I think they've made a lot of tremendous points. I mean, aside from it just being both a necessary and appropriate project for what it's trying to accomplish. The why now answers, I think, obviously it wasn't planned to have all those things, but there is an opportunity, as you said. I guess, I think anybody who's probably listening to this, who's gone to your other programs, et cetera, probably would walk out of there feeling pretty impressed and pleased with what you and the committee have done for the town, for the hopefully recognizing wisdom of some of the financial decisions we've made over years that have allowed us to be at a AAA bond rating. My concern in terms of the override vote really is, getting that information into the hands of people who are voting and, are sort of either prone to saying no, or, just aren't yet informed. And so I guess my question to you is, what do we as a committee need to be doing in the next couple of weeks? And or what plans does the building committee have to try to better educate people who are willing to engage in that process?
Yeah, so good questions, Mark. So first thing, if people want, please go to the Facebook page. There are, I've put out posts that kind of outline a lot of the why now things. So do that. We have offered and will schedule. I know public meetings are not necessarily for everyone. It can be an intimidating place. It can be just something you don't want to do, right? You might be able to attend, you might be able to watch, but you don't want to ask a question. Or, we're covering the whole project and really you want to dive into sustainability, or you want to understand the numbers more or something like that. And so what we have offered is Mendez project chats. Anyone out there that wants one, it'll be an informal, it's not a public meeting or anything like that, where myself, Jim, Mike, whoever is required or they want, can meet with them and their neighbors or group or get you're part of a book club or whatever, get people together, host it. We'll talk with you about whatever you need and get that information in your hands. All the things we have here are on the website as well, this presentation. But, the challenge with it is even this 40-page presentation, we boiled a lot of it down to this. So there's lots of information. So one of the other things we have on the Facebook page is more digestible. There's some cost slides. It's just a handful of slides. I want cost, go here. I want sustainability. There's 3 slides there, and those kind of things. So we've tried to curate that. We have reached we have, I think, a few hundred followers and things like that, but we want to reach everyone. So however we can do that, but those are the things we're doing right now. I'm going to be posting more things. One of the things I've been doing so far is I've been posting and responding to people on Facebook and other places, primarily as the building committee chair, which I'm doing as a way, it's very much an informative process, not an opinion process. But as a school committee member and a father and a resident, I do feel that I'm going to need to also put out my opinion on the matter, and so I'll be doing that. And I do have some other things I've shared with people that they can share with other people about these things. And so aside from that, I don't know what else we can do. We would be at a farmer's market. We would be all these things if it wasn't COVID. We would be at the senior center, right? We'd be there for the Lions breakfast. We'd be doing these things if we could. If anyone has an idea on how to reach people in different ways, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I always worry about is, and sorry, I give you credit for all the things you are doing. What I worry about, and it's something we've talked about in different times in terms of just general communications, is we do so much electronically, but there's a huge population of people who aren't in the loop on our communication, I don't know, like Michael sends out those emails, I don't know if it's every Friday or how frequently it is with, town updates. I don't know how many people receive those. And I just worry that, it's always a challenge. How do you get to the point of being able to reach people? And the only thing that I think about that gets to everybody is the mail. I just can't imagine. I guess that's all I can offer is, if there's a way to do that. And I know there are some campaign finance stuff that may relate to that. I'm not sure, but that's the only thing I can think of, Paul, that there was a way to get to people who just aren't necessarily typically engaged, but might be voting on the matter.
Yeah, there's two components to that. There's the campaign finance, and then there's state ethics, and whether a mailing from an official, town body to publicize the votes or different things is akin to actually using state resources, municipal resources for advocating for something. It's a little bit of a tightrope walk with some of those strategies. But I hear what you're saying. I think that one of the challenges is we could do everything we want to do. We could do everything in the world, and there are some that are just not going to engage. And that's kind of why we live in a free country, right? So, and I'm not throwing up my hands. I'm willing to do everything we can to get out to people. I guess a couple of things. There was an article in the previous month's town pages that, I respect people's opinion and I want them to be able to express them, but I also want things to be portrayed in a very not misrepresented. So the thought there was, because last night we had a question about, hey, this thing is over twice what we paid for the high school. What the heck? Why is that? I mean, aside from the fact that it's almost 20 years later, and if you just take the cost of the high school and you add 3%, 14 to 19 times, you'll get to this cost. But the article talked about, hey, this isn't the right time to do this. And hey, with the high school, we voted it down, we got it for less, and we're proud of it. And that's it's a dangerous misrepresentation of actually what occurred. So we went to, the high school was voted down. The fields were taken off of the project. The preschool was taken off the project. There was also a greenhouse taken off the project, but those are the two main things, preschool and the fields. And so it went down by $2 million, passed. And then we ended up spending more than that for the fields, still not having a preschool and still having to operate Pitaway as we do right now. So,
but Paul, plus the reimbursement changed too. We got less.
Went down.
We were reimbursed a lot less than if we had approved it in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a lot. I think it was, like 4 or 5% or something like that. So it went down. And at the end of the day, I just want to make sure people understand that the high school can be something we're proud of. That process, I'm not proud of that process. It is, and I think we've been doing a good job as a community to not do this anymore, but it was very, very short-sighted. And we ended up spending more and getting less. So I just want to make sure that is represented accurately, that I respect that somebody may have a difference of opinion, but to say that we got the same for less is just not accurate. So the other thing I want to make sure people understand, it's been brought up several times before, but that we've talked about town meeting, the moderators putting in provisions to make sure that's safe. I trust that it's safe. We have a lot of, as we talked about in our COVID calls, the body of evidence we have just locally that a structured, gathering of people that are socially distant, masked, is safe, right? We know this. We've been holding school all year. So I believe that's safe. If someone doesn't feel comfortable participating in the first part of that, as I said, they can come and to just vote. And then if they're not comfortable with that at all, they still have the opportunity to vote in the ballot. And they can do that in person, of course. And I give a lot of credit to Tara and her team. They did a great job. I voted in person in November. But again, if you're not comfortable there, the state has extended the mail-in voting option through March. So that is available for any resident that wants that. And all they need to do is they need to request it. Your 2020 election does not carry over into 2021. So you will need to request that, and the procedures for that are on the town website.
Well, can you just talk about the timing for town meeting, like how long the voting period will remain open after the meeting starts, do you know? So in honesty, he put out the document while I was in one of my meetings last night. So I have not read the whole thing. So I believe it's going to keep it open for 2.5 hours. But I don't hold me to that. But the procedures and FAQ have been posted by the town moderator. I don't want to purport anything that's inaccurate, so I'll leave it at that. All right, thank you. But it's only because he did do it while I was in those meetings last night, and I haven't had time today to look at that. So that's all I had. Hopefully that was at least some new information, but like I said, it's a challenging time, but this really does present an amazing opportunity for us to have really two very important projects for the town that will just, and I guess I didn't mention this before, but I'm very proud of the committee and the design team and the project team on how we've approached this this building, because we really have approached it from day one as not just a school. This is our community asset. There's something in this project for everyone. Seniors that don't think that there's something in here for this, it is designed with a walking path around all the fields. And I want that walking path to be something where it's a nice walking path. It's going to be a beautiful site, so they can come drive to over there, park their car, and have just a really nice walk on an amazing site. You know, whether it's the community programming that can occur in the building, the ball fields, whatever it is, that we've really made sure to always think about this, that yes, for those 7 hours during the day, during the school year, it's a school. But outside of those hours, this thing really needs to function as one of the go-to places and one of the biggest assets for the town. And so we've really thought about that, and through design development, we'll continue to think about it that way, and welcome all input to how can this project be an asset for any member of the community. So.
Good points.
Just trying to look on the town website to see if there's any information. It shows the page where it said, information's forthcoming. So it may be posted yet, or one of those old cookie problems. But yeah, I don't know. I know he posted it yesterday. Posted the FAQ and the procedures. I'll take another look later. But I can certainly send that out, and I can also post it to the project Facebook page. Those links. I haven't had time to do that yet.
And we can do an update on either Friday morning, or we still will have one more chance to talk about this next Thursday. It's hard to imagine that this vote is only 10 days away. Yeah. But certainly doing whatever we can within the next 10 days to get the word out and the details, so people aren't confused about what they need to do. Right. Yeah. And again, if anyone out there, anyone here wants to host an informal chat, we're happy to do that. If anyone really is like, they're having trouble grasping what the financial impact of these building projects are to them,
then by all means reach out. I'm happy to supply you that information, run the report, or anything like that.
Mark, I just found it. It's 2.5 hours after the discussion is done. It'll be open.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
Good. I'm
And
glad I didn't
there are
do
no
that.
other topics on the agenda for that meeting?
No, just the 2 building projects.
Right, yes, that is the exclusive. So he'll open it up. We will have presentations and discussions, and then open it up for voting. The people that are there for that, they can vote and leave. He probably was almost going to encourage that. And then, so and then people can come and go. So if they're typically, and this is one of the things people need to understand, typically we have a challenge with the school age parents with town meeting, right? They all have childcare issues all on the same night, right? This is a different one in that they could actually both easily vote because they can just pack the kids up in the car, drive down. One parent go in, vote, then the other one goes in and votes and drive home, and you're probably done in 10, 15 minutes. So I don't want to guarantee that because there might be some people waiting or something like that. So just make sure that, we want to hear everybody's voice on this. We want as many people as we can to weigh in and have a say in what's going on. So.
Well, any other questions or comments for Paul? I mean, Paul, another huge thank you for the tremendous work that you're doing leading this group and the commitment to the project, along with the rest of the group, Jim and Mike and Claudia and Chris and all the other folks on your team. I can't imagine that you've left any stone unturned. And the detail has been very much appreciated in the commitment. And we're seeing the results now, and it's really exciting to look at all the plans and to feel like we're this close to really getting this done. So thank you all, and especially you, Paul, because you're volunteering for this in a way. And I know how much of your time that it's taken up over a period of years, and it will continue to do so. So thanks to all of you. And it sounds like you're still open to people's requests and concerns, and they hopefully will be reaching out to you for whatever information they still need. So thank you. Next up, we go to you, Kathy, if there are warrant approval.
Yep. Okay. Between December 9th, 2020 and January 13th, 2021, I, Kathleen Bates, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $986,674.05. This includes general fund expenses of $705,418.57, revolving expenses of $124,256.38, and grant expenses of $156,972.57, and meals tax expenses of $26.53. I also signed off on $3,460,722.26 of payroll.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Next up, we have minutes. They didn't come in our packet, but hopefully you all saw Karen's email with the minutes attached. We can start with December 4th. Does anybody have anything on those?
No.
Or a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, Kathy?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. And then December 8th, 2020 minutes. Any?
I had one thing. I think it looks like the way the minutes were written, looks like Mark Terry might have come in later to the meeting because then he shows up
There was
later.
a meeting that I arrived at about 7:45 on.
Okay, I think that maybe we should, I'm not sure that's in there. I think we should probably add that in, that Mark entered the meeting at 7:45.
Anything else?
No, that's all I had.
Okay, we'll take a motion to accept those minutes as amended.
Moved.
Second,
I'll second.
thank you. All in favor, Kathy?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Paul?
I,
Mark?
Aye.
An aye for me as well. And do we have any gifts and donations this evening?
We do. The Massachusetts Ashland Cultural Council, $495.88 to the Ashland Middle School Diversity. Anonymous, $2,500 to the Helping Our Own Fund. Wait, $72.50 to AHS Student Council. Planet Aid, $219.80 to miscellaneous gifts and donations. And Looters Environmental, $75 for miscellaneous gifts and donations for a total of $3,363.18.
Do we have a motion to accept those gifts and donations?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, Kathy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Paul?
I,
Aaron?
Aye.
An aye for me as well, thank you. And Assistant Superintendent update, do we have one this evening?
Yeah, very briefly, just wanted to fill you in on the plans for our upcoming Professional Development Day on Friday. We have a full day planned. At the Pitaway School, we're going to be spending some significant time talking about best practices for inclusion support. At the two elementary schools, we're going to once again be working with our literacy consultant, Claire Landergan, who's going to really be talking about what's essential for informational reading and writing and getting our teachers to continue their work with the units of study. At the middle school and the high school, we are going to be offering opportunities for folks to take a course regarding live streaming. This is in lieu of the new requirements for student learning time. And we also have several other options for teachers as well, as some are already doing a great job with live streaming. And the high school is going to be continuing their work with our two consultants for our Equity in Action. Dr. Des Floyd and Dr. Chris Taylor will lead another session along with our amazing group of teachers who have taken on that task of being our leaders at the high school. On top of all those different offerings, we're also giving some significant time for collaboration and planning among the teams as we look at the curriculum and what we've done so far this year and how we need to make sure that we can ensure that our students are getting the most of our curriculum for the remainder of the school year. So taking a look at where we are and what we need to do to map and plan for the upcoming remainder of the school year.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Excellent. Any member updates?
No, I don't have any.
Anybody?
It's
Robin,
all there right now.
I think I gave mine, so.
Yes, you certainly did.
Yeah.
I will share that I did spend the day at the testing at the high school the other day. I don't see Ed on here anymore. But in very short order, I don't know if it was he had 48 hours to plan or not much more than that, along with Jim and whoever else participated in putting this all together. It went very smoothly, moving, close to 500 people through that testing site very safely and efficiently, and got the results really quickly. The people that ran it were very professional. There were plenty of people to volunteer to make sure everything that needed to happen happened. So thank you to everybody, and it was great to be there to be able to see how it all unfolded. My test was negative, so and other than that, I don't have anything else. Action items are same as what they've been. I do have to make a motion to go into executive session. So I'll give anybody who's on here one last chance to say anything before I make that motion. Anybody else?
Just second what you said as far as thanks to Ed, Audrey, Jim, everyone. I mean, in a year full of, fire drills, that was just probably another epic one at the very last minute. And so over the weekend, trying to get it squared away. So while they're contact tracing to it, it's just amazing the capacity people have to get this stuff done. So thank you.
For sure.
Right.
But and again, to remember that those folks, the contact tracers, and many of you are working, 24/7, and every additional thing that we add on is already being added on to an incredibly stressful schedule already. So to pull it off under those circumstances is even more impressive, but certainly something that really is benefiting our community. And we're continuing, it sounds like, to search for those kinds of opportunities. And we just really appreciate all of you. So thank you for that. And with that, I am going to move that we enter into executive session. Hopefully all of the school committee members have your special separate link for that when we leave here and go there. Under MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions, all non-union personnel, or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And 3, to conduct strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Not to return to open session. And this is involving the Ashland Educators Association, Teachers Contract, Ashland Nurses Contract, Ashland Unit B, Educational Support Personnel Contract, and Ashland Secretary's Contract, and the chair so declares. So I'll ask someone to second that motion, and then we can take a roll call vote.
Second.
And then all in favor, Mark Terry,
Aye.
Aaron Williams,
Aye.
Kathy Bates,
Aye.
and Paul Kendall.
Aye.
And yes for me as well. So we will move into executive session, not to return into open session. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you for your time. And
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Colin.
Thanks for being